Welcome to Managing God's Money film series. We are so happy that you're here. This is a series that will truly change your life, and we're so delighted, whether you're at home or at church. Thank you for joining. Welcome. This series is going to be a 5-part series. What we're trying to accomplish here is we're trying to give you biblical principles that will be life-changing, that will remove the stress that comes from debt, that comes from worrying about finances. If you don't have any financial issues, that's okay. What we want to do is convey to you an attitude of gratitude where we can in fact go and fund the Great Commission joyfully. How did I get here? About 14 years ago, my daughter Keisha asked me to do financial counseling, and I didn't see any book on the market then, and indeed, not even today have I seen books which had a strong, solid foundation in the Bible on which we built financial principles and techniques. So over a period, the Lord laid on my heart, and I wrote this book, Managing God's Money, which has a biblical foundation and financial principles built on top of it. In this seminar, we're going to look at 6 branches of managing God's money. The first branch, the gas principle, essentially 3 key biblical truths that will provide the basis on which to manage resources, time, talents, and any other resource that we've received from the Lord. The second branch, funding the Great Commission. And this is a way of looking at funding what God has called us to do in Matthew 28:18-20. How do we provide the funding to do what God has called us to do? The third branch, debt-free living. And a valid comment is debt-free living. Can anybody be debt-free in today's environment? Great question. We're going to talk about that. The fourth branch, the capital fund. It's what I call the credit card alternative. Without some sort of capital fund, we're going to be in deep debt. Because how do we buy large items? How do we decide that we're going to pay cash for a car? You probably said, are you kidding? Pay cash for a car? Get out of here. No, that's what a capital fund is meant to do. The fifth branch, the PEACE, P-E-A-C-E, budgetary control system. It's a closed loop planning and control system that everyone needs. If you're a school teacher, if you're a librarian, if you're an engineer, executive, anybody, this is a system which helps us daily to manage affairs. And finally, we look at the Spending Toolbox. In this toolbox, we'll find, and you're going to hear me talk about this throughout, a spending decision process. How do we make decisions to spend? Generally, what we do is we listen to what the guy on the TV says. And he says, do I have a deal for you, or do I have a deal for you? And we say, okay, let's go. No, we are going to look at something which says we make those decisions. So sit back and relax and let us start looking at the first branch, the gas principle. Folks, the gas principle is the start of heart surgery, because I'm going to be trying to talk to your heart. I want to talk to your heart, and I want that to truly change the way you think. Because today, when we look at spending, we look at spending through the eyes of the television, through the eyes of some other form of advertising media. And I'm going to suggest that we ought not to, because we're going to look at God owning everything. And if that's the case, we are mere stewards. What are the implications of that? We're going to present you with 3 key biblical truths in the gas principle, which essentially is going to transform the way you think about money, the way you spend money. And you probably are saying, you're kidding, because I don't have enough of this stuff. When we are finished talking in the gas principle, I think, folks, you're going to see As the widow in 2 Kings 4, 1-7 found, I've got lots of oil that can fill many, many jars. So folks, come on down. Let us look at the details. Let's see the gas principle. Thank you. Thank you. Managing God's money. Managing God's money. What we're going to do right now is we're going to build a foundation. We are going to build a foundation so that once we get out of here, we are going to be able to withstand the onslaught from the advertising. You know, the guys who says, do I have a deal for you or what? And you don't say or what, you say I have a deal for you, and we get into big trouble. We're going to establish a foundation. Before we look at the gas principle, let us look quickly, actually, at what is going on. We have begun a journey. Many times in the secular world, they're going to tell you, you know what, let's start all over. No, we don't want to start all over. In our journey, we want to start where we are, exactly where we are. You know, King David, after his sin with Bathsheba, when he was facing the consequences, his servants spoke to him, and this is what he said. David said, while the child was still alive, I fasted and wept, for I said, who knows, the Lord may be gracious to me that the child may live. But now he has died, why should I fast? Can I bring him back again? I will go to him, but he will not return to me. Powerful message. The message is, we've come in here with challenges, problems, some folks call them. We've come in here exactly as we are. And what we don't want to do is to wish there was a different set of situations. I'm going to be talking about stuff that might challenge you. You're thinking, oh, you know, 2 days ago, I said I did this, and probably I shouldn't have. The fact is, it's done. We want to start where you are. And you might be saying, Mike, you see, you don't know. But my situation is so bad. It is impossible. And I tend to check the dictionary many times for these words. Impossible means incapable of happening. But there is good news, because Jesus says everything. And when I check the dictionary of everything, it excludes nothing. Everything is possible for him who believes. And folks, I want us to start there. I want us to believe. I want us to believe. We also need to understand that Jesus spoke about money more than any single item. Money, wealth, and possessions. Did you appreciate that? Jesus spoke about money, wealth, and possession more than any single item. It's important to him. You know what I found out recently? He knows everything. I don't have a monopoly on knowledge. He knows. Sure, Lord, can I help you? He says, no, you've got this money thing. Come on down. That's his job. He's good at those things. So I want you to understand that. Money is never the issue. People will say, I got this financial problem. How can we have a financial problem? You know, I just want to demonstrate a financial transaction. If I have this plaque, it costs $10. It has a market value of $20, but I'm going to choose to sell it to somebody I'm going to select at random for $1. You sure you want to buy it for $1? You sure? You sure? Yes. Well, give me $1. You can have it for $1. But you know what? Give me your pen instead. So I don't want the money. I want the pen. What do we notice in that transaction? I have sold, she has bought, and there was no money involved. I took a pen. So the essence of the transaction is somebody has a desire for something. So if we try to manage the means to the end, we're going to be like just chasing after nothing. Money is never the issue. We have counseled so many folks, and we never counsel about money. Because it's not about money. Do you see what I'm saying? You know, folks, at home, you're watching this. And you need to understand that there is not a financial problem. What is the issue then, you may ask? The issue is the ABCs. ABCs. You see, today, we do everything that's right in our own eyes. Does that sound familiar to some folks? Judges 21:25. In those days, Israel had no king, and the people did what was right in their own eyes. In these days, the people do not recognize King Jesus, and we do what is right in our own eyes. So, the attitude, the worldview that we have, the worldview that impacts our behavior, the worldview that leads to the choices that we make, comes from the attitude of the world. If we believe a credit card is a source of financing, we go and we listen to somebody who offers a deal with no money down until 10 years from now, or 15, or maybe even 25 if you really want a good deal, as opposed to saying, what's the appropriate attitude? What's the attitude of Christ? So, folks, to manage money, we have to understand that we need to look at ourselves in the mirror. Today, we are overwhelmed by what I call deflection speech. We never say, I'm having a challenge managing my greed. We say, you know what? They made this wonderful offer, and they got me to do it. Yeah, right. We don't say, my shirt is too big. What we say, we don't say, well, my shirt is too small. We say, what? Oh, I've gained weight? No, we don't say that. I've lost weight? No. In that whole sequence, what do we say? We don't look at ourselves. We don't look at ourselves. We look at the external. Somebody made me do this. Something made me do this. The attitude of Christ is what we need to develop. The behavior, the attitude leads to the behavior which comes from the world. In these days, the people do what's right in their own eyes. The attitude leads to the behavior, and the behavior and attitude comes from the range of choices that we have. And the challenge, folks, is to have the source of choice as the Bible. The Bible. The Bible is the source of choice. So as we think about the attitude of Christ, let us look at the first branch. God owns everything. Psalm 24, 1-2. The earth is the Lord, and everything, the world and everything it contains. For he founded it upon the seas, and he established it upon the waters. And you know what I did? I checked the meaning of everything just in case it changed. Everything means nothing is excluded. So God owns everything. And I'd ask you a question. Do you believe that God owns everything? Do you believe that God owns everything? If you do believe that God owns everything, and I'm a left-brain guy, sorry, it means that I own nothing, you own nothing. Do you believe that? Are we prepared? Do we believe that we own nothing? Hello? You could answer. Do we believe we own nothing? Do we believe that we are merely stewards? Do you know what a steward is? A steward is somebody who manages something on behalf of an owner in the owner's best interest. Therefore, you need to know the owner. You need to know the interest of the owner. So if God owns everything, who is the owner? God. And therefore, I need to know Jesus Christ, the way to God. And this is where the heart surgery starts. Because we need to see this in our pocketbooks. We need to see this in our checkbook. We need to see this in our credit card statements. We need to see this when we go to church. Yeah. Do you believe that we have all the time, talents, and money to do everything because His divine power has granted us everything pertaining to life and godliness? Do you notice everything crops up, right? It's everything. Everything. It's excluding nothing. Do we believe this? Many times the pastor says, I need a volunteer to do this. And it's the same 5 people. Because what? We're busy. Folks, we're not too busy doing the right thing. I've just completed a book called Managing God's Time. I spent a year doing research. Do you know how people in this world, I looked at Saudi Arabia, I looked at Canada, I looked in the United States, I looked in Australia, I looked in New Zealand. We spend a lot of time doing things that's not really glorifying Jesus Christ. We have time. So the next time the pastor says, I need 5, come on. We need more than the same 5. You know what we should do? We should give the pastor a real challenge. He says, I need 5, 50 comes forward. So then we need to pray to select those 5. The harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. The next item in the gas principles, accept what you have. Hebrews 13:5. I don't know if you're like me, but I grew up hearing that money was the root of all evil. Hebrews 13:5 tells us it's the love of money that's the root of all evil. The love of money. Keep your minds free from the love of money. This probably, to me, is the most powerful aspect of getting control of money, which really means understanding who I am. The first aspect here is, who am I? What do I have? One of my favorite passages in Scripture is 2 Kings 4, 1-7. And if you recall, the widow of a late prophet came to Elisha and said, the creditor of my late husband has come and they want to take my 2 sons as slave. And Elisha says, what do you have in your house? And she said, your servant has nothing except a little oil. And as you read the story, do you know what Elisha says? Go throughout where you live and get all the jars and filled those jars. And you know what happened? There were not enough jars for the little oil. And Elisha says, pay your debt, and then you will have more than enough. What am I saying? I'm saying, folks, we first need to understand that we must accept who we are and what we have. What do I mean? Most of us spend a lot of money trying to change who we are because we see this person on the TV who says, you want to have these wonderful abs like me? Come on down. You do this and you do this and you do 6 backflips and 2 whatever cartwheels and come on. And we say, yeah, it's only $9.99. And anytime you say it's only anything, folks, get yourself an only box. And you put the money in there. And at the end of the year, you give it away to God's work. If you say it is only, families, let your children know. If it's only $5, put it in here. Oh, yeah. It's called the Samaritan's Purse. It's only $5. We accept who we are. Do you know that God doesn't make mistakes? When he made you and I, you know what he said? He said, wow, you're beautifully and wonderfully made. That's what he said. Instead, we try to change. God, Jesus, he loves you and I so much. Do you really understand how much he loves us? He died for us, folks. We must understand who we are in Christ. So when the advertising say that you got to gain 6 inches or you got to lose 5 or you've got to get wider or thinner, you say, no, Lord, my body's a temple, Lord. What do you want me to do? It's not what the guy on the TV. No. Accept who you are, accept where you are, and accept what you have. Accept what you have. We don't, in this world of upgrading, well, I got to upgrade. Well, I got this thing, I need a faster one, a smaller one, a taller one. Why? Do you know that today's necessities weren't invented yesterday? Today's necessities. I mean, did Jesus say, hey, Peter, how's it going? When last have you been to Capernaum? No. Folks, I'm not trying to be facetious. What I'm trying to say, if we truly understand that it's God's funds, when we spend, we have a system. You're going to hear me talk about a spending decision process, which comes from God. We must reject the victim mentality. Do you know it's getting to the point where in many countries you can't speak about anything unless it's gobbledygook? Because, you can't speak about Christmas because you're offensive. You can't speak about anything. And you know why? Because in these days, the people have rejected Jesus and they do what is right in their own eyes. What is right? Well, it's kind of like, what do you think? What do you think? This postmodern worldview, folks, it's absolutely bizarre. What do you think? What do you think? We have to expel Yabat. 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 Jesus is the only way. No Yabats. He is the only way. You know what? It's a narrow way. And that's the way it is. Why do we feel we need to go and apologize? No. We must be respectful. We must have grace. But it is what it is. The only way. It's not always leading to one way. It is the only way. What does this have to do with money? Everything. Because he owns it all. And we need to know the owner. We need to know the owner. We need to know the owner's principles. When I was in business, I need to know. As a vice president, I need to know the principles and the policies and the practices so that I could implement them. That's what we need to do. We need to know the owner. Seek first his kingdom and submit requests to him. Furthering his kingdom is our first spending priority. Yeah, really? Yeah. If we got to do what the owner says, we need to further his kingdom. We need to look at wants and needs in proper perspective. Wants versus needs. Today, we spend based on what we are told on the TV, in a newspaper ad. Somebody says 0% down, no financing, no interest costs for 2 years, whatever. And that motivates us. I want us to just recognize that the spending process needs to be driven by Jesus. And you would say to me, everything? And I would say to you, what did the word say? Everything. Of course. Everything. Everything. What does submitting our requests to Christ mean? You know, in thinking about submitting requests to Christ, if you're like me, you submit it, and then because you're well educated, you help him. Because you know the structure, you can do the probability analysis, and you have the scientific background. So he needs just a little help. So what I tend to do is I would submit it, and then I said, but Lord, I don't think you understand this part of it fully. Well, I know you understand, but probably you're not sensing it the way I sense it. And you know what he says every time? Hello. And when he says hello, I say, oh, yes, sorry, yes, Lord. He does understand. When I submit it to him, I need to not override his voice. You know, one of the things the Lord told me this year, as I was meditating, he says, you know what? You talk too much. And my wife says, yeah, yeah, yeah. But because I always try to help him. And folks, yes, we laugh, but it's a huge deal. Because I see something and I'm thinking, we should spend this. And I try to explain to the Lord, strong left brain thinking, why it's the right thing to do. And he says, I don't care what logic you bring, it's not the right thing to do. Have you ever experienced, am I the only person who experienced that? But I don't get it. And my other challenge is I look in the Old Testament, and I look at Moses, and I looked at the children of Israel being led out, and I think, how could these people not get it? And then my wife says, do you get it? So sorry, dear. But that's it. We need to have stuff in our hands loosely. Because you know the great thing about our Lord, Jesus? When we open the hands and he takes it away, you know what happens? Comes back much better. Because we don't know what's good for us. We have no idea what's good for us. None. We act after consulting him. And I do mean consulting. We act only after we've consulted him. So, in a nutshell, the gas principle, God owns everything. Psalm 24, 1-2, 2 Peter 1, verse 3. Accept what you have, Hebrews 13, 5, 2 Kings 4, 1-7. Seek first his kingdom and submit your requests to him. Folks, the challenge that we face in our world today is that there's an attack on the foundation of society. And this society is going to crumble because you're talking about some physical laws. When you remove the foundation, it crumbles. And I'm suggesting today that we need to recognize that the foundation for living, the foundation is a relationship with Jesus Christ. It's not a fancy thing. It's a real thing. If we want to truly manage money, and I use those words recognizing that it's an oxymoron because you can't manage money. But if we really want to get a grip on finances, we need a relationship with Jesus Christ. We do. And I'm going to challenge you. Would you sign a stewardship covenant with Jesus? Would you enter into an agreement with Jesus? Say, Lord, I accept my stewardship responsibilities. Time, talents, and money. I will become your CEO, you being the owner, and I will report to you and continually. I want you to think about that. Will you become Jesus' CEO? Would you accept that? Would you actually accept that? What would Jesus say about your attitude towards money? I want you to think about that this evening, tomorrow, a week from now, a month from now. Jesus sitting beside you, looking at your financial affairs, what would he say? This is not a guilt. What all I'm suggesting is, if we truly believe that God owns everything, if we truly believe God owns everything, we are his stewards. It follows. It follows. So if we start here, God owns everything, do I agree? Yes. I am his steward. Do I agree? You have to agree if you agree with the first point. Will you enter a stewardship covenant with Jesus? Okay, so now we are in intensive care. You've just heard God owns everything. God owns everything. And most of us intellectually know that. We know that. And what we've challenged each of us is, do we really believe that? Because the consequences of what we've just said is, if God owns everything, we own nothing. Are we ready for that? Folks, we need to sit back and really ask ourselves, do I truly believe? Am I prepared to accept the consequences of God owning everything and me owning nothing? That's what I'd like us to reflect on, folks, because it means that the income that comes to me sits in God's bank account. That's what it means, folks. I want us to think about that, because it means when we're going to spend, we're going to go to the owner. It means we're going to have to know the owner. We've got to know how the owner would spend. Are we prepared for that? Folks, I want us to reflect. Please don't reject unless we understand and we have truly asked the Lord to show us what the true implications are for each of us. Thank you for listening. Keep reflecting on this, because this is the essence. This is the foundation. This is where we're going to build. If we don't accept this, if we don't believe this, the rest of this seminar is not going to be taking hold, folks, because this is where the rubber hits the road. Please, I ask you, reflect on this.